Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. James Langley stared at the metal detector propped against his living room wall, its glossy newness mocking the worn furniture surrounding it. His nephew Tommy had meant well, but what was a retired Marine supposed to do with a toy meant for beachcombers and wishful treasure hunters? The morning sun filtered through dusty blinds, highlighting the empty coffee mug and wrinkled newspaper on his side table. Another headline about rising global tensions. He'd seen enough of those in his lifetime. Might as well try it, he muttered, grabbing the detector. The backyard needed attention anyway. Years of neglect had left it wild and overgrown. The old apple tree his grandmother had planted dominated the space, its gnarled branches reaching toward a cloudless sky. The detector's electronic whine filled the air as James swept it back and forth across patchy grass. He felt ridiculous, like a kid playing pretend. But then, a sharp, insistent beep near the apple tree's roots. Probably just some old pipes, he said, but found himself kneeling anyway, pushing aside loose soil with his hands. Something smooth and cool met his fingers. Definitely not a pipe. He dug faster, heart rate quickening despite his skepticism. The object that emerged was like nothing he'd ever seen. A capsule, covered in spiraling markings that seemed to shift in the sunlight. The metal, if it was metal, had an odd iridescent quality that made his eyes water. What the hell? As if responding to his voice, the markings began to pulse with a soft blue light. James jerked back, military training kicking in as he assessed threat levels and escape routes. But curiosity kept him rooted in place as the capsule's surface rippled like liquid mercury. A seam appeared where none had existed before, accompanied by a soft hiss of escaping air. James held his breath as the capsule split open with geometric precision. Inside lay a woman. No, not quite a woman. Her skin was a deep emerald green that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. Her features were striking, almost too perfect to be real, framed by hair that looked like spun gold. She wore some kind of form-fitting suit that shifted colors like oil on water. Her eyes snapped open, revealing irises of pure gold. She gasped, sitting up with impossible grace, and fixed those otherworldly eyes on James. When she spoke, her voice carried an accent he couldn't place, the words formal and stilted. "Good morrow, kind sir. Might thou tell me what year this present time doth be?" James blinked. "It's 2025. The woman's creatures?" Face fell. "So long," she whispered. "We have slumbered so very long." She tried to stand but stumbled, and James caught her reflexively. Her skin was warm to the touch, and she felt undeniably real in his arms. "I'm James," he said, still supporting her. "And you are—" "I am called Una." She steadied herself but didn't pull away. "I must admit to some disorientation. The suspension process can be most taxing." A police siren wailed in the distance, making Una flinch. James looked at his back gate, then at the beautiful alien still holding onto his arm. He thought about government facilities, laboratories, interrogation rooms. "You should come inside," he heard himself say. "It's not safe out here." Una's golden eyes studied his face. "You would offer sanctuary to one such as I? A stranger from the stars?" "Yeah, well." James shrugged, already leading her toward the house. "Let's just say I've got experience with people who don't fit in." Inside, Una moved through James's living room like a dancer in a museum, each step deliberate as she studied her surroundings. Her fingers traced the edge of his TV remote with fascination. "What manner of scrying device is this?" she asked, pressing a button. The TV flared to life, and she leaped back with a startled cry that somehow managed to sound elegant. "Just television," James said, quickly lowering the volume as a news anchor's voice filled the room. "It's for entertainment and—" He stopped, attention caught by the headline scrolling across the screen. Breaking. Mysterious capsules discovered worldwide. The anchor's voice was tense with barely contained excitement. Reports are coming in from multiple countries of metallic capsules being unearthed. Experts are baffled by the advanced technology. Yuna's expression darkened. So, the others awaken as well. Others? How many? James's question was cut short by his phone ringing. Colonel Wainwright's name flashed on the screen. His stomach dropped. Langley, Wainwright's voice crackled through the speaker. I need you at headquarters. Now. Sir, I'm retired. This isn't a request, Captain. We're activating all former Special Ops personnel. Something big is happening. The line went dead. James looked at Una, who had moved to his window. She stood in a shaft of sunlight that made her green skin glow like polished jade. Your military calls, she said softly. Will you surrender me to them? No, James said, surprising himself with how quickly he answered. But I need to know what's really going on. Why are you here? Una turned from the window, her golden eyes holding a depth of sadness that made his chest ache. We did not choose to sleep beneath your soil. We were driven there long ago by those who... She stopped, touching her temple. My memories remain, fragmented. The suspension has taken much from me. A commotion outside drew their attention. Through the window, they could see people gathering in the street, some holding signs. Even from here, James could read one. The end is nigh. Your people fear us, Una observed. People fear what they don't understand. James moved to stand beside her, watching as more protesters joined the group. And right now, there's a lot we don't understand. His phone buzzed again. Texts from fellow veterans, all getting similar calls to action. On TV, footage showed military vehicles converging on capsule sites around the world. I should go to the base, James said. Find out what they're planning. But first, we need to hide that capsule. Una's hand touched his arm, sending an electric tingle through his body. You would risk much to protect me. Why? James met her gaze, struck again by those impossible golden eyes. Because whatever's happening, I've got a feeling turning you over to the military isn't the right answer. A small smile curved her lips. Perhaps there is hope for your kind yet. Outside, the crowd had grown larger, their voices rising in a mix of fear and anger. James pulled the curtains closed and began planning. He had one advantage. Everyone would be looking for capsules in obvious places. Nobody would think to search the crawl space beneath his kitchen floor. As they worked to conceal evidence of Una's arrival, James couldn't shake the feeling that his life had irreversibly changed. The hollow emptiness that had plagued him since leaving the service was gone, replaced by something far more dangerous: purpose. The next few days unfolded in a blur of global chaos and intimate discoveries. James continued his balancing act, attending military briefings by day while harboring Una in his home by night. Each morning brought new reports of capsule discoveries. Each evening brought new insights into his extraordinary guest. Una's reaction to his refrigerator had been particularly memorable. You trap winter itself in this metal box? She had asked, standing before the open door with childlike wonder. Truly, your people have mastered strange magics. It's not magic, it's... James had started to explain, then stopped at her playful smile. She was teasing him. Despite her formal speech, Una possessed a quick wit and a mischievous streak that kept catching him off guard. Now, a week after her emergence, they sat in his living room watching news coverage of the latest developments. Una had borrowed one of his old army t-shirts and a pair of sweatpants, the casual clothes somehow making her otherworldly beauty even more striking. Your Colonel Wainwright speaks with much certainty about things he does not understand, she observed as the military leader appeared on screen, discussing containment protocols. James grimaced. The briefings had grown increasingly tense. David's complicated. Lost his family in an accident involving experimental tech. Now he sees threats everywhere. And yet you attend his meetings, pretending loyalty while harboring one such as myself. Una turned those golden eyes on him. Does this not trouble your conscience? My conscience is fine. It's my survival instinct that's questioning my judgment. He managed a wry smile. Besides, better to know what they're planning. The latest plans troubled him deeply. Operation Earthshield was rapidly moving from containment to active intervention. Teams were being assembled to secure any unopened capsules, and there were whispers about studying the technology through any means necessary. They're scared, James explained. Fear makes people dangerous. Fear? Una rose and moved to the window, a familiar gesture she made whenever discussing difficult topics. Yes, we remember fear. It drove us to our long sleep, though the reasons remain. She pressed her fingers to her temples, frustration crossing her features. The memories lie just beyond reach, like dreams upon waking. James watched her silhouette against the evening light. He'd grown accustomed to these moments when she seemed to drift between past and present, ancient knowledge struggling to break through the fog of suspended animation. Each recovered memory brought new questions. Who were her people? Why had they hidden themselves away? And why were they awakening now? A sharp knock at the door shattered the moment. James moved instantly, gesturing for Una to hide in the prepared spot behind his bookshelf. Through the peephole, he saw Tommy's eager face. "Uncle James, you've got to see this!" His nephew burst in as soon as the door opened, tablet in hand. They found another one in Peterson's field. And get this, it was empty. James kept his expression neutral, though his pulse quickened. Empty? Yeah, just like the ones in Brazil and Kenya. Some of them are opening before they're found. Tommy's eyes shone with excitement. What do you think it means? Where are they going? I don't know, kid. James glanced toward the bookshelf. Maybe we should let the experts handle it. But you're working with them, right? The special task force? Tommy lowered his voice. Mom said they called you back in. Are you hunting aliens? The irony might have been amusing if the stakes weren't so high. You shouldn't believe everything you hear, and you shouldn't be out after dark with all this craziness going on. I'm 17, not 7. Tommy rolled his eyes but headed for the door. Just be careful, okay? Some of the stuff online about these capsules is pretty wild. After Tommy left, Una emerged from hiding. He cares for you deeply. Yeah, well, somebody has to. James checked his phone. 3 missed calls from Wainwright. Listen, I need to go in. They're calling an emergency meeting. The empty capsules trouble them. It wasn't a question. Can you blame them? Your people are basically playing hide and seek across the globe. He hesitated. Any chance those memories might clear up soon? Give us something to work with. Una's expression turned distant. The knowledge comes when it comes. But, James... She caught his arm as he turned to leave. Be wary at your meeting. I sense... Something shifts. The wheels turn faster now. The base was a hive of activity when James arrived. Armed guards had doubled at every checkpoint and the tension in the air was palpable. He found Wainwright in the command center, surrounded by screens showing capsule locations and movement patterns. Glad you could join us, Captain. Wainwright's tone carried an edge. We've confirmed 14 more empty capsules in the last 6 hours. Whatever's hatching, it's accelerating. Hatching? James kept his voice carefully neutral. We don't know what these things are, David. Exactly. We don't know. Wainwright turned to face him fully, which is why, Effective immediately, we're moving to Phase 2. Any capsule found is to be secured and transported to designated facilities. Any occupants encountered are to be detained for questioning. Detained. Someone else voiced James's concern. Sir, if they're truly extraterrestrial, they're on our planet, Wainwright cut in. Our rules. I won't risk global panic because some ancient astronauts decided to play Sleeping Beauty in our backyard. His gaze swept the room. Questions? James thought of Una's sad eyes when she spoke of fear, of Tommy's excitement about mysteries he couldn't understand. He thought of the weapon at his hip and wondered how many others in the room were calculating the same moral equations. No questions, sir, he said, and hoped his voice didn't betray him. The drive home was tense, his mind racing with contingency plans. He'd need to move Una soon. His house would be one of the first places they'd look if they ever suspected him. But where could you hide someone whose mere existence was becoming the world's biggest story? He found her in the kitchen, attempting to make coffee with his ancient percolator. The domestic scene struck him as absurdly normal and completely impossible at the same time. Your brewing customs are most peculiar, she said without turning, but I believe I have mastered the ritual. Una. Something in his tone made her stop and face him. Things are getting complicated. They're starting to round up your people. I know. She set down the coffee pot. I can feel them, James. More awake in each hour. Soon there will be no hiding what we are, what we bring. And what exactly is that? He stepped closer. I'm trying to help you, but I need something to work with. Who are you people? Why now? Una's golden eyes seemed to glow in the dim kitchen light. We are. She gasped suddenly, doubling over. James caught her as her knees buckled. What's wrong? The memories, she whispered. They come. They. Her eyes went wide, and when she spoke again, her voice carried an echo of ancient power. We were here before. When your kind were young. We watched you grow, taught you, loved you as children. Her fingers dug into his arms. Until you turned on us. James held her as the memory seized her, her body trembling with the force of recovered knowledge. Outside, a police siren wailed, and somewhere in the distance, a crowd was gathering. The world was changing, and he was holding its catalyst in his arms. What happens now? He asked softly. Una looked up at him, tears like liquid gold tracking down her green cheeks. Now? Now we pray your people have grown wiser, for if they have not. She straightened slowly, her alien beauty taking on an edge of steel. Then all that we feared shall come to pass again. The artifact sat on James's coffee table, pulsing with a faint blue light that seemed to mock the pre-dawn darkness. He'd retrieved it from Una's capsule the previous night, after she'd mentioned it might help restore her memories. Now he couldn't shake the feeling that they were sitting on a bomb. You're certain this is safe? He watched Una circle the table, her movements fluid and precise in the dim light. Safe is relative, she said, a hint of her usual playfulness creeping into her formal tone. Like your morning coffee ritual, beneficial yet potentially destructive in excess. James snorted. After 3 weeks of hiding her, he'd grown accustomed to her odd comparisons. Pretty sure coffee never caused an international incident. No? Una raised an elegant eyebrow. I believe I read something about a Boston Tea Party. Their banter was interrupted by his phone buzzing. Another update from base, 3 more capture teams deployed, 2 specimens acquired. James's jaw tightened as he read between the lines. Wainwright was escalating. Your commander grows bold, Una observed, noting his expression. She knelt beside the artifact, her green fingers hovering over its surface. Perhaps it is time we grew bold as well. Wait. James started, but she had already touched the device. The room exploded with light. Holographic images burst from the artifact, surrounding them in a three-dimensional tapestry of memory. James staggered back as alien cities materialized in his living room, impossible structures of crystal and light that seemed to defy physics itself. "By the stars," Una breathed. "Our home." The images shifted, showing beings like Una walking among humans dressed in ancient garments. The scenes played out like a documentary without sound. Peaceful interactions, shared knowledge, technological advancement. "We were here," Una said, her voice thick with emotion. "We taught them, taught you, agriculture, architecture, mathematics." Her voice caught. "We thought we were helping." The peaceful scenes dissolved, replaced by images of warfare, primitive human weapons clashing against advanced technology, cities falling, the green-skinned people retreating, not fighting back even as they were slaughtered. "They wanted our technology," Una whispered, "not our wisdom, when we refused to give them weapons." She pressed her hands to her temples. "The memories, they burn." James moved to steady her, but stopped as new images filled the room. Thousands of capsules being sealed, hidden away in the earth. A last desperate plan to preserve their civilization until humanity might be ready to accept them. The hologram flickered out, leaving them in darkness. In the silence that followed, James could hear his own heart pounding. "Well," he said finally, "that complicates things." Una's laugh was brittle. "You have a gift for understatement, James Langley." She stood, moonlight from the window highlighting the tears on her cheeks. "My people were not warriors. We chose sleep over violence, hoping your kind would evolve beyond their fears." Her golden eyes met his. "Have you?" Before he could answer, his phone erupted with alerts. Similar artifacts had activated worldwide, triggered by the signal from Una's device. The sleeping giants were waking up, and humanity was about to face its past. James's drive to base that morning felt like entering enemy territory. Every checkpoint, every armed guard, every surveillance camera seemed to pulse with new menace. The artifact's revelations churned in his mind as he parked his truck. The command center had transformed into something resembling a war room. Maps dotted with red pins marked capsule locations. Screens displayed live feeds from containment facilities. Sterile white rooms where Una's people were being held. The sight made his stomach turn. "Glad you're here, Captain." Wayright's voice carried an edge of mania. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept. "We've got a situation." "The artifacts," James said, keeping his voice neutral. "Damn things lit up like Christmas trees last night, some kind of coordinated activation." Waywright pulled up footage on the main screen. And then this happened. The video showed one of the detention centers. A captured alien sat in meditation, green skin pallid under harsh fluorescent lights. Suddenly, their eyes snapped open, glowing with the same blue light as the artifacts. The feed dissolved into static. "They're communicating," Waywright said. "Coordinating." Every facility reported the same phenomenon. He turned to James, eyes fevered. "You know what this means? That we're holding peaceful beings against their will? That we're under attack!" Waywright slammed his fist on the console. "These things have been hiding under our feet for centuries, waiting to strike, and now they're activating some kind of network right under our noses." James thought of Una's tears as she watched her people choose sleep over violence. "David, you're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking perfectly clearly." Wayright's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "I lost Maria and the kids because we played around with alien tech we didn't understand. I won't let that happen to anyone else." The colonel straightened, addressing the room. "As of now, we're implementing Protocol Zero. Any capsules found are to be destroyed on sight. Any specimens showing signs of communication are to be terminated." Horror rippled through James's chest. "Sir, that's genocide. That's survival." Wayright's eyes were cold. "Choose your side carefully, Captain." James left the base with his mind racing. He had to warn Una, had to get her somewhere safe. But where could you hide from a global military manhunt? His phone rang. Tommy's number. James almost ignored it until he remembered his nephew's fascination with the capsules. "Uncle James, you need to see this." Tommy's voice crackled with excitement. "Peterson's Field. There's another one. But this one's different. It's moving." James's blood ran cold. "Tommy, get out of there. Now." "But now!" He broke every speed limit getting to Peterson's Field. The capsule had already drawn a crowd, civilians with phones out, local police trying to establish a perimeter. And in the center, a familiar green-skinned figure emerging into the sunlight. The new arrival looked male, older than Una, with elaborate markings on his face that seemed to shimmer. His eyes found James immediately, as if sensing something familiar. "You harbor one of our own," the alien said in the same formal English as Una. "She speaks of your kindness." James's hand instinctively went to his concealed weapon. "You can communicate with her?" "The awakening has begun. The network reforms." The alien's expression turned grave. "But darkness follows. Your warriors approach with death in their hearts." As if on cue, the thrum of helicopters filled the air. James made a split-second decision. "Come with me if you want to live." He winced at the cliché, but it got the point across. They barely made it back to his house ahead of the military response teams. Una was waiting at the door, her face lighting up at the sight of her kinsman. "Elder Kaz," she embraced the newcomer. "The dream spoke true. Others survive." "Many survive, young one." The elder's voice carried both joy and warning. "But the humans move against us. They destroy the sleeping ones, fear corrupting their hearts just as before." James secured the windows while they talked, mind working through scenarios. His training suggested multiple escape routes, safe houses, ways to stay ahead of pursuit, but something bigger was happening here. "The artifacts," he said suddenly. "They're not just memories, are they? They're a signal." Una exchanged looks with the elder. "A beacon," she admitted, "calling us to gather, to remember, to—" She stopped, pressing her hand to her head as another memory surfaced. "To access the archive," Elder Kaz finished. "The sum of our knowledge hidden beneath the earth these long millennia. The artifacts guide us to its location." "Where thousands of your people are converging right now," James realized, "walking right into Wayright's trap." The elder's golden eyes seemed to peer into James's soul. "You know this commander's heart. What drives him?" "Fear." James thought of David's haunted eyes when he spoke of his family. He lost everything to technology he didn't understand. Now he sees threats everywhere. "A wounded soul lashing out," Una said softly, "like the ancestors who drove us into sleep. But history doesn't have to repeat itself." James moved to the window, watching military vehicles roll past. "We need to get to the archive first. Show people the truth before fear takes over." A distant explosion rocked the house, another capsule being contained. Una stumbled, clutching her chest as if physically wounded. "They die sleeping," she whispered, "never given the chance to wake." The elder steadied her. "Time grows short. The archive calls, but reaching it, leave that to me." James checked his weapon, mind already mapping routes. "I know how the military thinks, how they move. I can get you there." "And your loyalty to your commander?" Elder Kaz asked. "My loyalty is to doing what's right." James met Una's eyes. "Someone recently taught me that fear shouldn't dictate our choices." She smiled, the expression somehow both ancient and playful. "Then perhaps humanity has evolved after all." They spent the next hour gathering supplies while Elder Kaz communed with the artifact, receiving coordinates for the archive's location. James contacted a few trusted former squad mates, calling in favors for transportation and diversions. As night fell, they prepared to move out. The Elder went first, slipping into the darkness with surprising stealth. James lingered at the door with Una. "Sure you want to do this?" she asked. "Your world may never forgive you. My world needs to grow up." He checked the street one last time. "Besides, I've gotten used to having an alien roommate. Be ashamed to lose the entertainment value." Her laugh was soft, musical, always hiding behind humor, James Langley. She touched his cheek, her skin cool against his. "Even when your heart speaks louder than your words." Before he could respond, movement caught his eye. Military trucks at both ends of the street. They'd been found. "Time to go," he said, grabbing her hand. "Ready to make history?" Una's smile turned fierce. Again. They slipped out the back door and into darkness, leaving behind the world as it was, running toward what it could become. Behind them, Wayright's forces converged on an empty house. Ahead lay the archive, and with it, humanity's second chance to choose wisdom over fear. Assuming, of course, they lived long enough to reach it. Dawn painted the horizon blood red as their stolen military vehicle wound through mountain roads. James gripped the wheel, every sense alert for pursuit. In the back, Elder Kaz meditated over the artifact while Una monitored emergency frequencies on a commandeered radio. 3 more capsules destroyed near Denver, she reported, her formal tone cracking with grief. "The network weakens with each loss." "He's trying to cut you off from each other," James said. "Classic isolation tactics. Yet he cannot silence what sleeps beneath." Elder Kaz opened his eyes, their golden hue now tinged with blue light. "The archive calls stronger now. We are close." The coordinates led them to an unmarked access road cutting into dense forest. James killed the headlights, navigating by moonlight. The tree cover provided protection from aerial surveillance, but also hid any potential ambush. "Wait!" Una leaned forward suddenly. "Do you feel it?" The air had changed, carrying a static charge that made James's skin prickle. Ahead, a clearing opened up, revealing what looked like an ancient stone circle. The monuments glowed with the same iridescent quality as the capsules. The gateway. Elder Kaz stepped from the vehicle, moving with renewed energy. Hidden in plain sight all these centuries. James scanned the tree line while the 2 aliens approached the stones. His tactical training screamed that this was too easy. They'd escaped pursuit too cleanly. The artifact in Kaz's hands pulsed brighter, responding to the stone circle. Symbols began appearing on the ancient monuments, flowing like liquid light. "The key awakens," Una breathed. "The archive opens." The crack of a rifle shot shattered the pre-dawn silence. James tackled Una as bullets peppered the ground around them. Elder Kaz dove behind a stone, the artifact clutched to his chest. "Predictable, as always, Captain." Wayright's voice carried across the clearing. "Did you really think we wouldn't track our own vehicle?" Special ops teams emerged from the tree line, weapons trained on the stone circle. Wayright stepped into view, carrying a device that made the air ripple around him. "Prototype defense shield," he said, noting James's look. "Reversed engineered from our guests. The technology that killed my family, repurposed to protect humanity." "David, listen to me." James kept himself between the guns and Una. "This isn't about protection. You're about to repeat a massacre that happened thousands of years ago. I'm preventing an invasion." Wayright's composure cracked. "These things have been planning this for centuries. Hiding, waiting, building their network. We hid from your violence." Una's voice rang with authority. "We chose sleep over war, death over destroying our children. Lies! Wainwright raised his weapon. No more talking. No more chances. The archive dies here. The artifact in Kaz's hands flared suddenly, its light connecting with the stone circle. The ground trembled as ancient machinery awakened deep below. The archive responds, Kaz called. The truth cannot be buried again. Light erupted from the stones, projecting images into the sky. But these weren't just memories. They were broadcasting worldwide. Every screen, every device, every communications network carried the same signal. Humanity's first contact with Yuna's people, the sharing of knowledge, the betrayal, the choice of sleep over violence, all of it played out for the world to see. Wainwright screamed in rage, firing at the stones. His men hesitated, weapons lowering as the truth of their actions became clear. "David, stop!" James moved toward his former commander. "Your family died because we misused technology we didn't understand. Don't let fear make you repeat that mistake." "I'm protecting us!" Wainwright's shield flickered as tears streamed down his face. I have to. The colonel crumpled, his weapon falling from nerveless fingers. Above them, the light show continued, reaching every corner of the globe. The archive had opened, and with it, the chance for understanding that Yuna's people had waited millennia to offer again. James held Yuna as the sun rose fully, its light mixing with the archive's glow. Around the world, more capsules were opening, their occupants emerging not to conquest, but to conversation. The cycle of fear had been broken. "Your heart proves stronger than your fears," Yuna said softly. "Perhaps now both our peoples can truly evolve." James watched as medical teams took Wainwright away, the weight of truth having finally broken through his walls of fear. The archive's light painted everything in shades of hope and possibility. "Evolution's messy," he said, "but at least we're learning." Yuna's laugh carried both ancient wisdom and fresh joy. "Indeed, though I suspect you humans will never cease surprising us." "Good," James smiled. "Keeps things interesting." Above them, the future unfurled like a new dawn, full of challenges and chances, fears and hopes, humans and aliens learning to share a world that had always belonged to both. The heart monitor's steady beep mocked James as he watched Wainwright through the hospital room window. 3 days had passed since the archive's awakening, and his former commander hadn't spoken a word since his breakdown. "The burden of truth weighs heavily," Elder Kaz said, appearing silently beside him. "Some minds shatter when forced to confront their own darkness. He'll recover." James wasn't sure if he believed it. Humans are adaptable. Indeed. The Elder's golden eyes reflected the fluorescent lights. "Which is why the Council has made its decision. We wish to establish formal diplomatic relations with your United Nations." James turned from the window. "That's fast. Time flows differently when you have slept for millennia." Kaz's expression softened. "Yuna has volunteered to serve as our primary ambassador." Something tightened in James's chest. "She'd be good at it." "She has also requested you as her security liaison." A hint of amusement colored the Elder's formal tone. Something about understanding both worlds. Before James could respond, alarms blared through the hospital. Red emergency lights strobed as security teams rushed past. "What?" James started, but his tactical training had already pieced it together. They'd let their guard down. They'd forgotten that Wainwright wasn't the only one driven by fear. The explosion rocked the building's foundation. Through the smoke, James glimpsed figures in tactical gear, not military, not official. Private contractors, religious zealots, fear given form and firepower. They're after the archive's location, he realized. Wainwright wasn't the only one with sources inside the program. Gunfire erupted from the stairwell. James shoved Elder Kaz toward an emergency exit. Get to the archive, warn Una. I'll hold them here. They will kill you, Kaz stated simply. James checked his weapon. They can try. The first attacker rounded the corner into James's ambush. Training took over, precise shots, controlled bursts, every movement economical. But there were too many. A bullet grazed his shoulder, another caught his leg. He stumbled, falling back. Through the chaos, he heard Wayright's monitor flatline. Pain lanced through James's leg as he limped down the hospital corridor. Blood trailed behind him, marking his path like breadcrumbs for his pursuers. The sound of combat echoed from multiple directions. These weren't just random extremists. This was a coordinated assault. His radio crackled. "James!" Una's voice carried an edge of panic he'd never heard before. "They're attacking the archive. Multiple teams, heavy weapons. Get out of there." He ducked into a supply closet as footsteps thundered past. "They're not just after the location anymore. They want to destroy everything. I cannot leave. The archive holds more than memories. If they damage the core systems..." The line dissolved into static as an explosion rocked the building. James's mind raced. The hospital attack was a diversion, splitting their defenders while the main force hit the archive. And Una was walking right into their trap. He keyed his emergency frequency. "All units, this is Captain Langley. Hospital is a decoy. Primary target is the archive. Converge and contain." Forcing himself upright, James grabbed supplies from the closet shelves. Field dressing for his leg. Adrenaline shot. Anything to keep moving. As he worked, his radio picked up scattered transmissions, similar attacks worldwide, coordinated strikes against alien diplomatic sites, fear's last desperate gasp. A familiar voice cut through the chaos. "James!" Wayright's voice was weak but clear. "Supply room. Now." James found his former commander propped against a wall, medical equipment scattered around him. The older man's face was gray, but his eyes burned with clarity. "They used me," Waywright said. "Fed my fear. Gave it purpose." He coughed, blood staining his lips. "The zealots, the corporations, they all want the same thing: control. Save your strength. No time." Waywright pressed something into James's hand. A key card. "My security codes. Emergency protocols. Everything you need to end this." His fingers gripped James's wrist. "Don't let them do what I did. Don't let fear win." The monitor flatlined for the second time. This time, there would be no revival. James pocketed the key card and moved. His legs screamed protest, but adrenaline carried him forward. The hospital attackers had pulled back, confirming his suspicion about the diversion. He commandeered an abandoned police vehicle, lights flashing as he raced toward the archive. The scene that greeted him was apocalyptic. The ancient stone circle was scarred by weapons fire. Bodies, human and alien, littered the ground. At the center, Una stood before the archive's entrance, her green skin glowing with internal light as she worked the control systems. "Get away from there." A man in tactical gear emerged from cover, weapon raised. "Step back or we start killing hostages." More attackers appeared, dragging captured aliens and human defenders, Elder Kaz among them bleeding from a head wound. Una's hands never stopped moving across the controls. "You cannot stop what has already begun. Watch us." The leader raised his weapon. "Humanity won't bow to alien masters. We'll bury your archive and your kind so deep." James's first shot took him in the shoulder. His second hit the man's weapon. He'd learned from Una's people: disable, don't destroy, break the cycle. Chaos erupted as James emerged from cover. His injured leg slowed him, but Wayright's security codes gave him an edge. Automated defense systems recognizing their former commander's authority. Turrets emerged from hidden positions, forcing the attackers back. "The archive is overloading!" Yuna's voice carried over the firefight. "The damage! I cannot contain it!" James reached her side, watching in horror as energy cascaded through the ancient systems. The stone circle pulsed with unstable light, the ground trembling beneath their feet. "If it goes critical," Elder Kaz warned, "the knowledge of ages dies with it, and the blast." "We'll take half the mountain," James finished, "along with everyone on it." He turned to Yuna. "Can you shut it down?" Her golden eyes met his. "Only by initializing a controlled collapse from inside. A sacrifice play, as you would say." "No." The word came automatically. "There has to be another way." "James." She touched his cheek, her skin cool against his fevered flesh. "You taught me that sometimes the only way forward is through." Before he could stop her, she pressed her lips to his, a kiss that tasted of starlight and ancient wisdom. Then she was moving, diving through the archive's destabilizing entrance. "Yuna!" James lunged after her, but strong hands held him back. "She knows what she does," Elder Kaz said. "The archive must be preserved but contained, changed as all things must change." Energy spiraled outward as Yuna worked inside, her form visible through pulses of light. The attackers fled, their fear forgotten in the face of raw power. James watched, helpless, as the woman he loved rewrote the laws of physics to save them all. The archive's light shifted from unstable red to steady blue. The ground stopped shaking. And in the center of it all, Yuna stood transformed. Her green skin now laced with patterns of living light, the archive's knowledge integrated into her very being. "It is done," she said, her voice carrying echoes of ancient power. "The archive is no longer a place but a part of us, safe from those who would destroy it, accessible to all who would learn." James limped toward her. "You could have died." "But I did not." Her smile carried the same playful edge as always, despite her transformation. "Someone once told me that evolution is messy." Sirens approached as dawn painted the sky. The world was about to change again. But this time, they were ready. 1 month later. The bell above Joe's diner chimed as James pushed through the door. Morning sunlight caught Yuna's luminescent skin patterns as she studied the menu, drawing curious but no longer fearful glances from other patrons. "The coffee here is adequate," she said as he slid into the booth, "though your definition of fresh eggs remains suspect." James couldn't help grinning. Even as Earth's first alien ambassador, even carrying the combined knowledge of her civilization, she hadn't lost her essence. "The UN meeting went well?" he asked, though he'd monitored the whole thing from his security position. "They are learning." She stirred her coffee, patterns swirling beneath her skin. "As are we all. Fear fades. Understanding grows." Her golden eyes met his, though some things remain beautifully, perfectly complex. "Like us?" "Like us." Outside, the world spun on. Humans and aliens worked to rebuild trust, to create something new from the ashes of ancient mistakes. It wasn't perfect. Evolution never is. But as James watched Yuna order pancakes in her formal diplomatic tone, he knew they'd broken the cycle. Sometimes love really was enough to change everything. 5 years after the archive's transformation, James stood at his backyard fence, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that hadn't existed before Yuna's people shared their knowledge of light and perception. The old apple tree still stood, its branches now adorned with hybrid fruits developed through combined human and alien agricultural science. Tommy burst through the back gate, nearly dropping his university tablet. "Uncle James, the theoretical physics department is losing it. The archive just released new data about quantum entanglement, and it completely validates Dr. Adams' work on cross-species consciousness." James smiled at his nephew's excitement. The scared teenager who'd once called him about a moving capsule had grown into a promising xenobiology student. Let me guess, Yuna's doing? She says it's time humanity understood more about the quantum basis of empathy. Tommy collapsed into a lawn chair. How do you handle being married to a living library of cosmic wisdom? I remind her that she still can't work the coffee maker. A familiar laugh carried from the doorway. Yuna emerged, her green skin traced with luminescent patterns that shifted like starlight. She wore simple human clothes, jeans and one of James's old t-shirts, but moved with the fluid grace that marked her people. The coffee maker, she declared, is deliberately obtuse, much like my husband's attempts at humor. James watched her settle into her favorite spot by the tree. 5 years of marriage, and she still took his breath away. Not just her beauty, but the way she balanced ancient wisdom with genuine joy in simple moments. The UN Security Council asked about the quantum data, she continued more seriously. They worry we're moving too fast. They always worry. James sat beside her. But they're not stopping progress anymore. Not since the Chicago Accords. The Accords had been their first major diplomatic triumph, a framework for sharing knowledge that protected both species while pushing boundaries. James had watched Yuna negotiate for 72 straight hours, her skin patterns glowing brighter with each breakthrough. "Did you tell them about the Mars project?" Tommy asked eagerly. "Not yet." Yuna's patterns flickered with amusement. Though Elder Kaz suggests we let them discover the plans accidentally. He believes humans prefer to think they've cleverly uncovered secrets rather than being gifted knowledge directly. James snorted. He's not wrong. The evening settled around them as Tommy shared his latest research stories. James let the conversation flow, his mind drifting to how much had changed. His old nightmares had faded, replaced by dreams of impossible cities and quantum harmonies he was only beginning to understand. A gentle chime interrupted Tommy's enthusiastic explanation of cross-species DNA mapping. Yuna's pattern shifted to a deeper blue, her diplomatic signal. "The Council of Elders calls," she said, rising. "It seems Wayright's final records have yielded something interesting." James tensed slightly. Even after 5 years, his former commander's name carried weight. Good or bad? Neither. Different. She touched his shoulder, sending a familiar tingle through their quantum bond. He was not always wrong about the dangers, only about how to face them. After Wayright's death, his private files had revealed a deeper truth. He'd discovered evidence of other alien civilizations, not all as peaceful as Yuna's people. His fear had been real, if misdirected. "That's why the Mars project matters," Tommy said suddenly. "We're not just building colonies, we're building bridges." "Preparing," Yuna corrected gently. "The universe is vast, and not all meetings will be as fortunate as ours." Her golden eyes met James's. "But fear need not be our first response." Inside, the secure communication system chimed again. James watched his wife, ambassador, archive-bearer partner, walk with familiar grace toward her duties. The patterns beneath her skin danced like constellations. "You know what's weird?" Tommy gathered his things. "These days, the history books talk about the awakening, like it was inevitable, like humanity was always going to make the right choice." James thought of bullets and blood, of choices made in desperate moments. History gets written by the survivors, kid, but it gets lived by people just trying their best. After Tommy left, James limped to his study. The old wound still acted up in cold weather. Photos lined the walls. His wedding, where Yuna's glow had literally lit the ceremony. The first joint human-alien scientific conference. Tommy's graduation. Moments of a life he'd never imagined possible. On his desk sat the metal detector that had started everything. He kept it as a reminder that the biggest changes often came from the smallest choices. His secure tablet lit up with a message from Elder Kaz. "The stars call. Are you ready for the next step?" James smiled. 5 years ago, that message would have filled him with dread. Now it sparked only curiosity. He typed back a single word: always. The next morning dawned clear and crisp. James found Una in the kitchen, actually managing to work the coffee maker for once. Her pattern swirled with shades he'd learned to read as contentment. "The council approved it," she said without turning. "The Mars mission launches next month. Tommy's research team made the final cut." Of course they did. James accepted the coffee she offered. "You didn't influence that decision at all, did you?" The archive's wisdom must remain neutral. Her lips curved in that mysterious smile he'd first fallen for. "But perhaps I mentioned his promising work on cellular adaptation." They moved to their favorite spot on the back porch. The neighborhood was waking up. Human children playing alongside green-skinned youngsters, anti-gravity bikes sharing the street with regular cyclists. Normal life, reshaped by extraordinary changes. "Do you ever regret it?" James asked suddenly. "Taking the archive into yourself, becoming something more." Una's patterns shifted thoughtfully. "Do you regret choosing love over fear that day? Becoming something more yourself?" "Point taken. The universe expands," she said, her formal tone carrying warmth. "Consciousness evolves. What matters is not what we become, but how we choose to become it." She traced one of his scars gently. "You taught me that." A sonic boom overhead drew their attention, one of the new hybrid ships testing atmospheric boundaries. Soon it would carry humans and aliens to Mars, then beyond, not running from fear, but reaching for understanding. "Tommy asked me something interesting yesterday," James said, "about whether we got lucky, finding each other, if it could have gone differently." "And what did you tell him?" "That maybe luck isn't about what happens to you. Maybe it's about what you choose to do with what happens." Una's pattern sparkled with amusement. "Most wise, for a human. I learned from the best." He stood, offering his hand. "Ready to go change the world again?" She took it, green fingers intertwining with his. "With you? Always." They walked together toward their waiting transport, leaving the apple tree behind. Its branches swayed in the morning breeze, hybrid fruits gleaming with promise. Below its roots, an empty capsule lay buried, a relic of old fears transformed into new beginnings. The future stretched before them, uncertain but bright. Not perfect but possible. And in the end, that possibility was all anyone could ask for, human or alien, bound by love stronger than fear, reaching together for tomorrow's light. The end. In the years that followed, historians would debate the significance of the awakening. They would analyze political shifts, technological advances, the quantum leaps in human consciousness. But perhaps the truest measure lay in simpler things. A green-skinned woman mastering a coffee maker, a former soldier learning to trust, a young scientist reaching for the stars. For in the end, evolution, whether personal or cosmic, happens not in grand gestures, but in quiet choices, in moments of fear overcome by love, in bridges built across the vast distances between hearts. And somewhere, in a small backyard beneath an ancient apple tree, it all began with a metal detector and the courage to wake up.